Imagine a world where 5,000 years of Eastern medicine is understood and integrated with the last few hundred years of our Western medicine. That would give us an understanding of not only our physical anatomy and our inner physiology, neurophysiology that's running everything, it would also give us a bioelectrical map of what's actually orchestrating everything, an understanding of the frequency in the field. And what's running that in our system is the nervous system. And what's funny about talking about the nervous system is that my nervous system, my brain and my spinal cord and all of my peripheral nerves, are talking to your nervous systems, talking about itself. And if that's not the biggest acid trip in history, I'm not sure what is. So there's a lot that we do know about the nervous system, and any doctor or biologist or scientist will tell you that there's infinitely more that we don't understand. And what I want to share with you today is what I call the unified field in medicine, which is this weaving of West and East that's never been done before, from the past to the present. And it's about to change the face of medicine just as radically as the unified field theory in physics is about to radically change technology. And what I propose, the connection between the two, is geometry and fractals. And it's funny to talk about fractals, too, because it's actually a very new word for a very ancient concept for thousands of years that we would call pattern thinking. And that's what's about to change not only technology, but all of our biology and our medicine. And so what do fractals have to do with you, and what do fractals have to do with medicine, and what do fractals have to do with cancer, and how we're changing our world medically is what I want to share with you today. So the main message I have to share with you is that if you have a body, you are the best healer that you know. And that doesn't mean don't go see your doctor. This is not an FDA-approved talk. But it does mean that we have incredible healing capabilities that we're learning more and more about, and choosing to be an active participant, and that is really the only decision that we need to make. So I come from a lineage of people on both sides of my family who've always worked in the healing arts, from medical doctors to traditional healers and herbalists. And I started studying shiatsu and Eastern diagnostics back in the 90s, and then went on to study acupuncture. And I seem to have learned a particular skill or inherited a gift from my family of being able to see and feel the nervous system in a very palpable, direct kind of way. And what I've learned from the body is that it really orchestrates everything, that the human body is really more like tissue paper for the frequencies that are running from the inside of the body straight to the outside of the body in these beautiful orchestrations. And the body has taught me that geometry is not the source of energy, but it's an agent for the human mind to witness the invisible in action. Much like mathematics, we use these symbols, either of numbers or of geometry, in order to understand and really have deep philosophical discourses. And the fact that it's even mildly connected to mathematics is hilarious for me, because I failed math at an impressively young age. And so the fact that I have anything having to do with mathematics is a very massive cosmic joke to find myself standing here sharing that with you. So this is what we know. This is one map from the West that we call dermatomes. You could call it the first energy system or the energy map in Western science, if you wanted to use the E word. But of course, Western science calls this action potentials that are firing from your nerves and your nervous system and coming out to the surface of your skin. And this is how we feel on our skin. When I look at the body, this is the best 2D representation I can share of what it is that I sense and I feel. So we are just neural frequencies that are moving from the inside out to the surface and well beyond the body. And it explains to me not only where dermatomes are on the body, but why acupuncture points were found where they were. Because I believe the ancients were very, very aware of how to actually sense and feel on that level. And having studied acupuncture extensively and going in and seeing all the different points, and having done cadaver work and what have you, it's amazing to actually find the correlations. If we kept this picture up, it would just end up looking like light. Geometry is just light. Geometry is just an opportunity to kind of grab onto a light beam for a second and take a look at what it actually is. And we know that the most important light sources and biophoton emissions from the body come from the deep sources of DNA. So we are actually a light body, and it's no longer a New Age concept. I teach therapists who work with the body, whether it be from massage to chiropractic to acupuncture, how to access the nervous system more directly by understanding neural frequency and geometry to amplify their treatment results. When this happens, when you're speaking directly to the nervous system, it allows the nervous system to drop and release tension, which increases blood flow and therefore reduces pain syndromes. It's what every bodywork therapist is going to do with you, but when you're working really directly with the nervous system this way, it amplifies that response. And I call it neural resonance therapy because of the resonance that would really run through the system when my hands was on a body and as the body was teaching me all of this that I'm giving you a brief overview of today. I was also raised in a technique that my family calls somatic stretch, very long lineage of working with the body in a particular way. So I've been teaching that since the 80s, and I always say that the body taught me what fractals are and what fractal anatomy is, and somatic stretch taught me how to use it. So I also teach individuals how to actually understand and work with their own pain syndromes and unlock them easier, and I'll share that with you today by giving you a brief overview of fractal anatomy in just a moment. The unified field theory in physics is about understanding how relativity in relation to the quantum world can actually relate to one another. And so relativity is about how all the big things move, how planets move and space-time moves. And of course, the quantum world is about all the little itty-bitty-bitty bits that seem to function on a very different level. And finding the link between the two is the holy grail. But it's much like having atoms who turn into fibers, that turn into yarn, that creates a pattern, that ultimately creates a sweater. And they have to be connected, otherwise we'd all be naked. So there has to be some sort of link between the two. The unified field theory in medicine is what I showed you in the video briefly. Aside from muscles, I showed you all of these systems very quickly. There's a lot of theory behind them. But it's like being able to look at a house, and if you wanted to take a picture and show somebody what multiversity looks like, you would take a picture of the front and the top and the sides and the electrical in each room, and every picture would look different. And because we're taught to think very linearly and on the surface, we would have them lined up like cards on a table. But as you saw in the video, if you actually line them on top of one another, they naturally start to create a geometry. And that geometry doesn't represent just the core, but you've got planes of energy that move through the body. So in this way, Eastern and Western medicines can begin to understand each other when you put all the cards together and you can actually see house. So this is a 2D representation, but again, it's more like being able to go in and grab a light beam from the body. What is the core energy system running your body? This is a very fractal shape, so it looks simple, and there's a lot to say about it, and a minimal amount that I can share today. But in 3D, of these planes of energy, which is how I sensed it every time I touched a body moving in and through, and it took 25 years for me to actually be able to say all this, even close to 18 minutes. So there was a lot of exploration between working on bodies and reading different books. In 3D, this is what it looks like, which was a fascinating surprise to me too. And what's important to understand about this is that this was a sheerly sensory experience for me. I backed it up with a lot of theory, but never would the theory fall into my lap first and then I'd apply it to the body. It was what I felt in the body first, and then some theory would magically drop into my lap at the right moment, at the right time, and show that I was on the right path. And it's important that you understand that it's a sensory experience when I show you what the Resonance Academy is doing, because there's some interesting synchronicities there. This shape also coincidentally fits into the middle of the vector equilibrium, which is really the geometric perspective of the zero-point field, where all potentials exist. And I find that to be a fascinating coincidence. And I was actually just reading in Lynn McTaggart's wonderful book, The Field, the other night, that the zero-point field is just storage memory. So that's a really interesting connection with that. And it was Nassim's work that made me realize along this journey, because it's only so long that you can start to find something that you're finding in your body, and nobody in the field was really talking to me about it. And so I was beginning to think I was the crazy one. And then Nassim's work came along many years ago, and I realized that what we're discovering in the cosmos is what we're discovering in the body today. So a fractal is a pattern that repeats itself at different scales. Doctors at Harvard are using this already to be able to track tumor growth faster because of how blood flow works in the body. And we're also able to understand how to help heart health and understand it much less invasively by being able to pull in more and more on an EKG. And the more the fractal iterations continue, the healthier the heart is. And when the fractal iterations start to break down, so does the heart. So there's a lot we're already understanding in medicine about this. And from the East, many of you may have heard that the hand or the foot or the eye or the ear is a mirror for the whole body. How many people have heard that? Right, most people. And so really, the whole body can be a mirror of the whole. And even in Western medicine, we have Wilder Penfield's homunculus of understanding an aspect in the part of the brain that actually maps out every single part of the body. So from both the East and the West, we have parts of the body that are mirroring the entire body. And would it seem logical that only those parts mirror the whole body? Or would it seem more logical that if this was a truth, every part of the body would be a mirror of the whole? And that's what fractal anatomy is. So in your body, fractal anatomy is best broken down into threes. Again, this shape is fractal in nature. It's not found just in the torso. But this is the easiest way to kind of break it down. Upper, middle, lower pertains to upper, middle, lower. It can also pertain to the upper, middle, lower of the lower part of your arm, or the upper, middle, lower part of the upper part of the lower part of your arm, and you could keep going forever and ever and ever into infinity. And basically, you would be able to tell your entire health from your fingertip if we knew how to read it. And that's pretty remarkable. Upper, middle, lower also pertains to your calf. So next time that you have any kind of pain in your torso, don't worry about the theory, because you're your own living lab. Go into your calf and work out through your calf. Find sensitive areas, because you will be amazed, and you can even do that while you're here. Today I fixed my back while working on my foot while Nassim was speaking. It's amazing what you can do when you really go in and you work with your own sensory system, and that's actually how I found all this, regardless of the theory that comes behind it. Another way to look at fractals is to consider your joints much like a spider's web. So just like a drop of water in each link of the web, whatever the image is behind it is going to shift as soon as the image moves. The image moves, everything moves with it. And I'm going to suggest that our joints do the same thing. And so the broad way to look at that is that if your shoulder hurts, open up your hip. And if your hip hurts, open up your shoulder. It works remarkably well. It's how I could work on my toe this morning and fix my back. So there's a lot to say about this, but that's just like an easy little thing to play with as an idea. And pain actually moves in a lot of different areas and intersection points throughout our body, and you don't necessarily recognize that. So I'm going to show that as well in a minute. Let's pretend this is a chakra outside of your body. I'm using chakra as an example because it's only the first of many Eastern systems that we're most familiar with in the West. And we tend to think that chakras being on the surface or in 2D, but in fact they're very 3D. And when I look in a body and I see an intersection point, not just a chakra, but in different areas, they look more to me like a singularity. A singularity being where numbers that are describing energy get to such a dense point that they all of a sudden turn into something else, like a doorway and a portal between here and there. The there that we come from and the there that we're going to and the here that we are now. So when we're looking at different kinds of singularities, imagine that it's not just the chakra system, but the fact that if a singularity exists in every single proton of your body, that means we have a skajillion portals that we call chakras throughout the body. And it's the question of the active participation of getting in touch with the consciousness that can relate to that holographic field. So let's take a look at that nagging pain between your shoulder blades. I have a laser here. Where's that? You see that little red spot right there next to what we call the heart chakra? You know how you get that nagging pain in your shoulders sometimes? What you often don't necessarily recognize, if you're looking in that area and the geometry is communicating all through, you don't necessarily consider that the pain right here in the side of your neck you get, the pain on top of your shoulder, the pain in the front of your body, that nagging pain in the back, and even a pain in the side of your arm, just to mention a few, are actually all connected to the very center core because you are fabric. And things pull from the inside, and we have not been taught to think from the inside out. What geometry allows you to do is the next time you have a pain there, consider that you're not touching on the surface, but you're working into core to be able to communicate with the nervous system. You can touch an arm, think into core, and the nervous system immediately starts to respond and release, and that release is what's dropping the tension and allowing blood flow to move through. So it's an acceleration. It helps you help yourself a lot, obviously. And just as one brief example, I recently alerted a client and therefore his doctor to metastasis that had been melanoma starting in his abdomen that had moved down to the deep tissues of his thigh, of his calf rather, back here. And eventually it would have been known in about 3 weeks because his foot dropped. But it still alerted the doctor a good 3 weeks in advance to do a biopsy and discover the metastasis and do something about it sooner. And if I can do that, then imagine what doctors can do when we really understand the integration from east to west, because that's all I'm reading. So before I finish with fractals and cancer, I want to show you what the Resonance Academy is doing, which they started to cover last night. This is called the Tetrahelix. It is their latest technology in understanding how to charge the awesome water that's being charged here. It's based on a tetrahedral structure in a clockwise and counterclockwise rotation of spiral and spin in order to create that charge. And they are, as you know, charging water through it now and growing plants at different rates in order to be able to prove the point of the fact that they're pulling from the vacuum. What I find interesting is that my shape is very similar, and it's also based on a complete tetrahedral structure and on a counterclockwise and clockwise spin. So geometry is poetry, and this is a beautiful poem. This is sensory experience in relation to their intellectual pursuit, showing a microcosm and a macrocosm. And because this was a sensory experience, and I know nothing of physics, it shows a really, really beautiful correlation, I think, of possibilities of what we're seeing in the mirror. If it were to continue on, the shape, again, as I said, is just a core energy idea of grabbing onto a light beam, but ultimately it's representing the toroidal structure that exists around every atom, every planet, every cell, every person. And so, finally, let's talk about fractals and cancer. One thing that we have known for a really long time, but that's not actually really commonly known, is that when tissues fall to less than 60% of oxygen, cancer begins. What we are familiar with is the fact that cancer starts to act entirely differently from the host environment that birthed it. It takes this non-oxygenated reality and it starts to spread all over its host environment until eventually it kills its host and it kills itself in doing so, which sounds frighteningly familiar to what it is that we do on the planet. So we create cities devoid of oxygen practically. We spread that over the planet. And we have actually no real sense of how disconnected to nature we are. If it's not painted on a bus or on our t-shirts, we don't really know what living in the wild means at all because we were born into this. And so if an animal from the wild even comes in, we kill it instantly. And we spread this reality across the planet, seemingly to no end, destroying and acting completely differently from the host environment that birthed us. So is it possible that cancer is not the terrorist? Is it possible that what we've done is we have created the ultimate biological fractal of being able to mirror exactly on the inside what we've created on the outside? And if that's possible, then imagine the power we have. That would mean that if we want to clean up the oceans, we just need to clean up the waters of our own bodies. And if we want to clean up the land, we only need to clean up the fibers of our own being. And while that seems like a really simple statement and a really large statement at the same time, and addictions and habits seem to stand in our way, they appear to be the very biological, psychological doorways or zero-point fields into the very spaces where we can draw from the vacuum, draw to be able to pull in healing not only for ourselves, but for our entire ecosystem and our planet. And that makes activism a daily event that each and every one of us can choose moment by moment. Because it appears that if we have a body, we are the best healers that we know. Thank you.